everyone, hello and good evening. Welcome to this edition of Startup Central. Remember, this is India's only show that focuses on startups along with technology, innovation, disruptors and more. I'm Vandabash. And just a note to all of our viewers, we'd love to know what you want to see on the show and what you don't want to see on the show. So your feedback is important. Do pitch it to us, and who knows, you could also be a part of our show. The email ID that you can connect with us is on the top of your screens. That's suc@etnow.tv. Now, before we kickstart today's show, let's take a look at all the top startup stories in Fatafat mode. Starting off then with Google, which plans to log on to the job search market in India. The company has tied up with Kormo, a company that specializes in jobs rarely posted online. Google has been undertaking pilots in the country through its next billion users. Meantime, private equity firm Kedaara Capital has invested in eyewear solutions company Lenskart. They've reportedly invested close to $55 million or 392 crore rupees for a 61.43 lakh Series F shares. Meantime, automakers Hyundai and Kia are going to invest in Ola Electric Mobility, and now of the ride-hailing major Ola. Details of this transaction could not be ascertained, but the deal comes months after Hyundai and Kia have already invested $300 million in Ola. Meantime, PayU and Forstone International are closing on a $10 million equity funding round in .pe, that's a fintech startup. Reports suggest that this round is expected to close over the next few weeks. Azim Premji, meantime, says that Wipro and IISc are working on the driverless car project. They're also working on building the country's first homegrown metal 3D printing machine. Both organizations have set up a hybrid industry academia in order to drive discovery of ideas. An e-commerce slowdown sees an impact on online sales. A report by Kantar Group suggests that consumer spending has seen a 20% dip. Mobile sales have witnessed its slowest growth, and reports suggest that the slowdown is due to the dwindling discounts and the slump in growth. There you have it, all the startup stories in Fatafat mode. Now let's switch focus to the big voice of the day. From starting as a SIM card seller at a young age to building India's largest hospitality chain, Ritesh Agarwal's journey has been nothing short of motivational. In this interview with my colleague Nayantara Rai, Ritesh speaks about his journey. He also shares tips on how to be a successful entrepreneur, which I'm sure everyone wants to take note of. Here's that exclusive interaction.
Today we're going to get you a masterclass with the Oyo founder Ritesh Agarwal. Before we do that, here's a quick recap from the previous episode.
I spend a lot of time across the world now. As you may imagine, Oyo is an increasingly global company with presence from Texas to Tokyo, as I usually like.
Your CEO Aditya Ghosh often jokes that maybe you are the older one in the equation.
No, I always tell him I was born middle-aged and I kept growing older. And Aditya remained a millennial. So I think when we started Oyo, there's a very simple dream. How do we give beautiful living spaces to the common man for the right price point? I think we've come a long way in that journey, but I feel we're just getting started. We continue to learn and hear feedback of our customers. If our customers keep telling us that, hey, this is the use case we need a brand for, we will make it for them. If our customers say, hey, we don't need so many brands, we need a few of them which are more consolidated, we'll do it for them. Okay. So we are constantly listening to our customers. Every day, 70% of our customers give us feedbacks.
Okay.
So we listen from those customers and then make sure that we are preempting and solving for them.
You know, Jeff Bezos once said that he reads every email. I'm sure he gets a lot of angry emails, a lot of grievances and all of that. Do you also get them, and do you read every email? Is it even possible?
Yeah, if you speak to our team members, you'd realize that I think for me, I read almost as many as I can customer emails. And what's good about that is once customers...
Honest feedback.
Yeah, once that. And the other one is once customers realize that this CEO reads his emails and responds to them, they make sure that they tell their friends that, hey, if you have a problem, just write to Ritesh and he will solve it. So
you want to tell your email address?
I think you could go to Google and find it. It's not very hard. Email, phone number, everything.
Are you in fundraising drive? You're doing a huge buyback as well. What's going on?
So look, our company already had a significant balance sheet. We had a balance sheet of upwards of $1 billion, roughly 1.5 billion. Now on top of that, I think over the last few years, my belief and conviction in the company only kept increasing. And I felt this was the right time for me to try and showcase my commitment and belief I have. When I started this company, I had very limited resources. I started this business with a 30 lakh angel investment by giving away a double-digit percentage ownership in my company.
Okay.
So this allows me an opportunity of being able to make sure that I can genuinely showcase my commitment. And I started the discussions with Lightspeed and Sequoia. They said, no way, why would we sell a company that is growing faster than most of the companies that we've seen? And I think my reasoning was, this way you'll help the company and me to be able to be more confident and excited about the aspiration that we have in the future. They of course had a choice to still say no, and I would still put as much effort I was putting behind the company, but I'm very thankful for them to understand that Ritesh genuinely believes that when he started the company, he gave ownership, and now he feels that if he has the opportunity and the resources to, he should try and buy some ownership.
I would imagine Sequoia and Lightspeed would make a lot of money and much faster at half the time, right?
I think, of course it's a good return for them, but at the same time, I think they're very invested and they would like to make sure that their other part of the ownership stays along for as long as possible, because the company is in a growth path like never before.
But you've got, obviously you have all of the funds in place to exercise this huge buyback.
As of today, it looks like.
So now let me ask you, Ritesh, where do you see OYO 10 years from now?
It's too early for me to say what OYO
5
will be.
years from now?
But I can tell you that...
You must be having a 10-year plan. Do you have a 10-year plan?
So look, I think the view to take is, it's very hard for me to say what will change. What I can tell you is what will not change.
Okay.
Our customers, 5 years back, when I was starting the company with 10 hotels, trying to make sure that I was at the reception of as many assets as possible. Even today, I try to be at the receptions of a lot of our assets.
Do you do surprise checks?
I do surprise checks. I stay at OYO hotels wherever I'm traveling.
Do you own a home? Because a lot of people say that millennials don't like to own homes.
I like not owning a home.
Okay, but do you own a home?
No, I don't.
You don't own a home?
I don't own a home.
So, and that is what your entire business model also is going to be based on, right?
Yeah, we believe that fundamentally housing ownership is reducing quicker than ever before. Young millennials, whether they're students or young professionals, want to stay on a monthly subscription package. And I think our subscription in OYO Life has been fantastic. We are now the #1 co-living company in this country and continue to grow at roughly 8,000 beds a month.
Okay.
So the speed in which that product is bringing customers in gives me even more confidence that this movement has started, that young people are saying, buying houses, not worth my money, buying experiences, absolutely worth my money.
And time now for the masterclass with Ritesh Agarwal. Ritesh, before I start the masterclass, I want to talk to you about the entrepreneur that you are, so much that you've achieved at such a young age. And it's just not in India, you are overseas as well. You live in China. I believe you even have a Chinese name now. How does all of this work out, and how do you do it with the revenue basis and the various companies that you have, the various brands that you have?
So thank you so much for having me here. Really appreciate it. I want to begin by saying that I live in a plane all across the world. China is of course an important market. India is equally or more important, and so many other parts of the world. So OYO has evolved over time into becoming a real global company. Of course, India remains the backyard and the home for us, but at the same time, what we're seeing is markets such as United States and China emerge as very impactful businesses for us. So if I were to sort of talk about our broader global revenues, probably only 33% of our revenue comes from India, roughly 33% again from China, 20% from Europe and United States, and the rest would come from Southeast Asia and Middle East, Japan, and few other geographies. So it's a fairly distributed global business, but all of this said, India continues to be the heart and the love of how our business is able to make a positive difference to the lives of millions of people here.
So do you think of yourself as an Indian company that went overseas, or now do you think of yourself as a multinational company with an Indian heart?
We think of ourselves as a young company wanting to make a positive difference with a lot of love and support from India, where we started from, and we continue to be very thankful and have massive gratitude for that.
But would it happen that very soon you will, right now it's about what, 70-30 if I were to do India global. What kind of a mix do you see this panning out to be?
It's hard for me to say.
Depends where you go,
I think the view we think about life is how do we continue to make sure that we make a positive impact. India has one of the largest populations of people in the world and hence remains a
India and
market.
China, you got most of the planet covered, right? Most of the world's population covered.
So there's a large number of people and we want to make a positive difference for them.
Yeah.
I think revenue is only an outcome of that. For us, India is special because this is where we started from. This is where we got all the love and support in the early days. So that gratitude and that belief in making sure that the market share, the growth and the improvement in lifestyle for customer should be at its best, which is why India, we run Oyo Hotels, but we also have the leading co-living brand, leading cloud kitchen brand and multiple businesses, all of which focus to make sure that we make a positive difference to customers' lives.
What's a bigger global brand? Is it Oyo or is it Airbnb?
I think it's hard for me to say, but for me, one of the things that I'm starting to see is Oyo's impact has become very special. So if you think about one of our Danish brands called Dansender, it is making a massive positive difference in Denmark, where we are able to be one of the leading vacation homes player. Or if you think about our vacation home brand called Belvilla, which has spaces all the way from Northern Lights up North Europe, right all the way to Italy, around Tuscany, and a bunch of beautiful places around south of France. So the ability to make sure that there is a brand built here in India, where you can find a space in urban Los Angeles or Texas, but at the same time also by the Northern Lights or in Himachal Pradesh, that's a special impact that our company is able to make.
How do you feel when Airbnb took part in the last fundraising round?
Look,
was it like a validation or did you say, oh gosh, what are they up to?
Look, I think Airbnb and specifically what they've been able to build in the many years has been truly special as well. They're one of the most impactful startups in the world right now. And I saw that for the last few years, Airbnb was increasingly becoming an impactful distribution partner for us, where we saw that Oyo Homes, which is a special business for us in Goa, in Europe, in London, and so on, Airbnb was bringing significant demand for us. So we felt the ability to have them as a shareholder will only make sure that we can tighten our ties. But that said, we continue to be as close partners with Expedia, with Make My Trip, with Ctrip, with Booking.com, and all the other brands.
And all that talk of the merger, one buying out the other, or merging Airbnb and Oyo?
Look, I think this has been a narrative or something that comes up every 3 months where people just find different companies to sort of decide that Oyo is going to merge with them. I think the only thing that we are focused on is our customer. I think a lot of these...
But you're not looking at inorganic growth?
Our view is we are very mission oriented, and whenever we look at acquisitions or M&A, we only look at competencies. We don't look at buying revenue or profits or any of those. So weddings, Sandeep brought a fantastic ability of understanding how banquet spaces are run. So he knows which are the couple of 100 days where Hindus get married, all the religions get married. He knows exactly what is the interiors of the place, what kind of like mehndi kahan honi chahiye, what's the photographer that's a special experience. I mean, that's something that we did not have the capability of. And also the real estate and the distribution side. You'll be surprised, weddings.in has over 1 million Instagram followers. It's the world's most followed weddings Instagram handle. Okay. So the impact that somebody like him could make is so special that we could never do it ourselves.
Yeah.
So the ability to have entrepreneurs like these is what we really love and enjoy.
And are you scaling this up globally or?
Yeah, I think we've seen this across markets. In China, we had a partner called Chen Yu. This young guy named Gun, he made one of his brands that was called the Mountain Hotels, literally translated in English, and beautiful interior design. I will actually try and share some of the pictures with you to show your viewers. I think the ability to design such beautiful places in the mountains in China is special. So we felt that an entrepreneur like him could come in and add significant value. So in every market, we look at such special entrepreneurs who can bring something to our company that we can't do it ourselves. And that's the only reason why we do M&As.
Are you married? Have you figured out how you want to get married? Has the business helped you figure out your plan?
I'm married to Oyo for now.
So Sandeep has not been able to convince you how to get married? He said he knows everything to do about it.
Yeah, I think the good news is weddings will definitely get business then.
Okay, now let's talk about Ritesh Agarwal, the entrepreneur. When did you know that you wanted to be an entrepreneur?
So, there is a funny answer to this and there's a legit answer to it.
Tell me the funny one first. Yeah.
I think I was in 5th or 6th grade because my elder sister and I have 7 years. Yeah. So I was in 6th grade.
So you were 11 years old.
I was roughly 11 years old. So my elder sister comes back home and she says that, I just participated in our entrepreneurship event. And it was very hard for me to even pronounce. Right? So I said, what is this? Then I went to the Oxford Dictionary and figured out what entrepreneurship meant. Yeah. And then in the class, a lot of people ask you, what do you want to do when you grow up, right? So people would say the usual engineer, doctor and so on. So I felt I wanted to tell something different. So I just said, I want to be an entrepreneur. I had no idea what this meant. It just sounded different. And even the teacher would then ask, so what's an entrepreneur? And then I'd say the exact dictionary meaning, which is somebody who would solve a problem and makes a business around it. And then people would be like, well, that sounds like an interesting profession. Yeah. So that's the funny answer of how I got introduced to the word entrepreneurship.
Okay. And what is the legit reason?
The legit reason is that there was never that one moment which told me that I should become an entrepreneur. I was always trying to do different things right from early years. So
I was going to ask you, did you always want to be the different one?
I was always that kid, right? So when I was 13 years old, I used to sell SIM cards. Okay. So which is why a lot of people at Airtel know me from the very early days. Funny story, the reason why Oyo started at $9.99 was because I had worked at Airtel for a project which was lifetime prepaid, which is also $9.99.
Wow, okay.
And
how old were you then?
I was 13 years old, 13 or 14.
They hire 13, 14-year-olds?
No, I was not an employee, I was like a third party.
We've all done, we've done those school jobs.
So I was always that kid who wanted to do different things. Long story short, right after my 12th grade, I was naive enough to think that I should start a company of my own. I spent 3 months.
Did you go to college?
That was still between school and university, the 7 months. That's the time everybody does all the random things. The 6 months period. It's not still the gap year. So March is when you have your boards, and a lot of colleges start during August, September. So you have this.
Mine started in July.
So the different ones. So with that perspective, it gives you enough period of time to try and do all kinds of different things. So this was the period where I tried to start a company of my own. One thing led to another. That business didn't do that well. I spent a lot of time meeting and staying with homeowners, hotel owners and so on. And that's when I realized that worldwide, large hotel chains have completely left off this large market opportunity of mid-market and economy hotels. And that's where I felt that we could come in and make a positive difference.
How old were you then?
I was 19 years old.
You were 19 years old. Yeah. And when did you start then?
So 19 is when I started Oyo Hotels. The first Oyo Hotel was started then. It was here in Gurgaon, and from that one building, today we manage worldwide tens of thousands of buildings, over 1 million rooms, and the world's third largest hotel chain. But still, like I said in our last discussion, just getting started.
Just getting started. So Ritesh Agarwal, you started when you were 19 years old. How did you get the money? And who took you seriously?
Yeah, look, I should narrate the story of our first asset owner I met. So the first asset owner,
was it an uncle or an auntie?
Mr. Yadav, yeah. So Mr. Yadav meets me and he says, so what's the offer? So, I for some reason had a lot of conviction that this partnership is going to work out. I think that's why naivety is a good thing. I feel for entrepreneurs, naivety is fantastic because if you know about all the hundreds of problems, now imagine if you want to get into financial services today, you'd say that, hey, look at NBFC, so many problems and so on and so forth. But a true entrepreneur who's naive but truly excited about making a difference will tell that, well, maybe I will figure out. And that naivety is why most companies get created during the tough times. Most companies are not created during the great times, right? So I think that naivety helped me as well. If I knew that hotel businesses require so much effort, I would have said that I might as well go to university.
Really?
But because I knew nothing, and I had this conviction of saying that I wanted to make a difference, I said I should get started. So this asset owner across the table, I proposed him our partnership, which has become the principle across the world, which is if we make a profit, we share it together. If we make a loss, if you make a loss, we still give you a minimum guarantee. And that combination told the asset owner, this is fantastic.
I lose nothing.
I lose nothing. And you're a good partner and we should get started. And over time, I'm happy to say that within South City area and around in Gurgaon, we'd have significant number of Oyo assets and now across the world. So I think that in the early days, if the entrepreneur has conviction and a purpose, and she or he shows that they're willing to put the effort behind that mission, people end up taking you seriously.
Did you go with a family member for this meeting or you went alone? I have to ask this question. You were 19.
My family had no idea. If they're seeing me, they will be smiling or be remembering some of these days.
Were you bunking college and doing all this?
No, so yes, by the way. So my parents lived in south of Odisha. Now they moved to Bhubaneswar. So they were all in Odisha. And my choice of Kota actually was for this reason, that it is so far away from home that if you want to come in a train, it's like 3 days. So you could do all kinds of new things. So I used to take weekend trains and come to Delhi and attend Thai events like I was telling you earlier.
Yeah.
So for me, I think at that point of time, I could do all of these new things. The first asset that I went and met with, it was just me. And the asset owner, and I think in the early days, I also brought together a few people to support me, a lot of whom are making positive difference for us. So Anuj came in the early days and has been making a positive difference all throughout and has stayed along with the company all through. So Oyo has had this fantastic team effort from the early days, including some young interns who have gone on to become, join the company after university and become some of the special parts of our organization. But coming back, the first meetings, I realized that if you talk sense, if you talk as if you know what's happening in this industry, in that hotel's problems, people take you seriously. And that's what has been true for us in the many years.
So age is just a number.
Age is absolutely just a number.
So when did you tell your parents that you were up to all of this?
So my parents got to know when the Thier Fellowship announcement came, because they realized that this kid has now signed up to drop out of university and he signed a contract for it. So my parents called very unhappy saying what's going on. But I think by then they realized that this is what I have to do. But I must thank, I think, there was recently a news story about this as well, that back in the day when I was thinking about just getting started, my parents were also partly convinced, even before Oyo, by some people from Times Group trying to convince that you should let Ritesh do what he's doing for at least a year. So multiple people tried to influence my parents.
Yeah.
Much to my dismay, they did not agree for a long enough period of time until I just started doing it.
And you started doing it.
But
is
they've
that
been
your
very
advice
supportive.
to young entrepreneurs that, if it worked for you, it doesn't have to work for everyone else?
Yeah.
The thing is that, we all look at the college dropouts, the successful ones, but there are
Yeah.
lots of instances when it doesn't work out. Are you asked this question and what do you advise them?
Sure. Look, I think, I'm asked the specific question of saying that do you encourage people to drop out? And my answer
I was
is
trying
no.
to be polite.
My answer is no. I believe that education should never come in between, university should never come in the middle of education. This is what our Thier Fellowship contract said in the second page or something, which means that what I tried to do in the real world was just one way of trying to learn and educate myself, and possibly I'm continuing to educate myself 99% things, I'm probably just 1%. Same way, university is also a great way of educating yourself. So I don't encourage people to make the decision, but I do tell people is that you should decide what is the best way of education for you. It could be university, it could be real life. Coming to the specific question of saying that entrepreneurship doesn't really bring success to everybody. Look, I was not successful when I started this company. I had a failure, like I told you, before I started Oyo. So to be fair, failures exist for everybody. The honest reality is, if you persevere, and this is something I tell a lot of people, if you persevere long enough with all sincerity and you want to do a positive difference while making sure that if you've created value, you know that you're going to get paid, I think there is always light at the end of the tunnel.
Okay.
I think that's my primary perspective, that is, if you're a young entrepreneur and you see failure, remember, you should persevere with sincere efforts, and there is always light at the end of the tunnel.
Always light at the end of the tunnel. You had one failure, but with every success there is always failures. What did you tell yourself to keep yourself motivated to not give up?
So one thing that I take a lot of pride in is called the risk versus regret. This is a framework that I use to make decisions.
Okay.
Which is, whenever I make a decision, when I look back many years later, will I say that I regret that I did not take that risk? If I feel that I will regret not taking that risk, I would rather risk it than regret it.
Yeah.
I think that's the principle that I use to make a lot of my decisions.
Okay.
And I think at that point of time, I felt that I genuinely believe that this can work, this can make a positive difference. So when I look back, I should never feel that hey, why am I so regretful that I did not, always in a bar discussions, you'd have seen that people discuss that, hey, I had this idea, I could have done it much earlier. There are people who say that, and there are people who say that I did it.
Yeah.
I never wanted to be the person who said that I could have done it. I felt that if I tried doing it and I failed, no regret, because I at least tried.
Yeah.
But if I did not try at all, I will always regret.
With that, we're going to take a short commercial break, but at the next episode of Startup Central, we'll be back with Ritesh Agarwal. Thanks for watching.
Welcome back. Still tuned into Startup Central. Let's get a move on then and focus in on the e-commerce players. You've got the economic slowdown, which has certainly had an impact on the online sales, with the first half of 2019 seeing a dip in consumer spending. Even popular categories like mobile phones have been impacted, according to a study by Kantar. Let's get on board Rahul Dayama. He joins in to decode the trend. And Rahul, clearly the festive sales are just around the corner. What kind of demand are online players expecting? Has there been a dip?
Well, Amazon and Flipkart are all set to clash on September 29th with their online festive sale. Both of them indicating that they are gearing up for a robust demand in one of the biggest sales of the year, really. Coming back to a report by Kantar that has indicated that consumer spending has been down by a fifth of the first half of this year, largely really marred by lowering discounts. Remember, the government has been tightening the nose. The norms have got stricter, so the discounts are considerably down. And also the growth slump really has forced people to postpone purchases. The big categories, the likes of mobile, fashion, both have taken a hit with close to 16 to 17% decline compared to the last year. Average ticket size, average spending has also been down by close to 20 to 25%. But all's not bad, because remember, the festive season is the biggest garner of market share for online players. A bulk of their sales really is registered in the month of Diwali, which they will of course start off by this month end till about December. So the optimism as far as retailers are concerned, they're also indicating that while they haven't really seen any impact of the slowdown, they've maintained that on record. Both Amazon and Flipkart have told ET Now prior also that consumer demand continues to grow, also because they really cater to an interesting price point, various price points for the consumer. But all eyes on the online festive sale to see if that will break the previous year's record. Redseer data has also indicated mobile phones, which is the largest category, has seen the slowest growth in the last 5 years. But all of that may really change with festive sale. So yes, it'd be very crucial to see how the festive sale not only pans out for online players like Amazon and Flipkart, but also for the entire industry, to give us a sense of where the sentiment is heading.
All right, thanks very much for joining in and giving us that perspective, Rahul. Let's get a move on and discuss this further. Then we have K. Ganesh, founder Growth Story, joining in right now. And also Harminder Sani, founder and MD Wazir Advisors. Good to have you both gentlemen on board. I'm going to start off then with you, Mr. Ganesh. To begin with, Amazon and Flipkart both maintain that there is no slowdown, but the different studies that we've been talking about, my colleague as well just spoke about it, they're indicating that consumer sentiment has in fact been dipped. The average spending is down 21% till June 2019. So what side of the story should we believe?
No, I think from a general slowdown, and you talk about biscuits and talk about automobiles, less getting sold, and challenges in those sector. As far as e-commerce or the startup sector is concerned, I think these are all overstated. Very clearly, whether it is grocery, whether it is basic goods, people will continue to buy those goods. Now, the fact that large purchases, discretionary purchases, people can afford to delay it is a fact. And it does happen even otherwise also. Whenever festival season is coming, people expect great deals to come, so people can postpone purchases that are postponable by that. So I will not read too much into this. Having said all that stuff, e-commerce is still a small fraction of the total retail. So the impact on that would be low. The other factor is during such time when the sentiment is slightly down, people tend to buy a slightly lower. They will go for smaller pack sizes. They will go for slightly cheaper alternatives. They will settle down. Not because it's real, but because it's just the sentiment. There again, e-commerce offers a much better choice, much better variety of purchase, higher discounts. I think all of them will tend to ensure that more than the non-e-commerce physical retail, you will see that e-commerce is not that affected. Of course, I'll exclude high fashion, luxury goods where people have a tendency to postpone. When I talk to people, they do say that we are expecting GST to come down, therefore I'm postponing purchases of cars. Similarly, festive deals will come up, so I'm postponing purchases of mobile phones. So I won't read too much into these reports in terms of it directly impacting Amazon, Flipkart, e-commerce or new age industry sales per se.
Fair enough. Harminder, would you tend to agree with that, that as of now, only when it comes to the big ticket or luxury spends, that may be postponed to a certain extent, but otherwise you wouldn't really read into these reports of a slowdown affecting these e-commerce players?
Absolutely. I think this is all, a lot of these things are getting overstated. It all started with automobile sales, and somewhere then they started, then we went to the other extreme of smaller consumer FMCG products and one or two reports here and there. But obviously, people like us, we are also alarmed that what exactly is going on. And I have been talking to consumer product companies across the board, and every single company is confirming that they are not impacted as much, but it seems somebody else is. And who is that somebody else? I'm still trying to discover. So I think let each of these companies report their numbers, and then we'll see what the real impact is. But it doesn't show any which way, either from the reports from the companies informally or our retail survey, that there's any such amount of slowdown happening across the board. Cars are not selling. I personally think as a country we should celebrate that, because where is the room for more cars? Where is the capacity of a country to burn more fuel? But anyway, it's besides the point.
If I may come in here, I get your point. Where's the need for more cars? But then there's massive job losses as well that have been seen on account of that. We've had a lot of dealers who have acknowledged the fact one after the other that there has been a complete shutdown in their overall dealership. These companies as well are continuing to suffer. So the overall chain as well does get impacted in terms of at least jobs.
Yeah, I agree with you, but there are certain employment creators many decades ago, and they have completely disappeared. And I'm sure there are other jobs which have been created and more people are employed. So I don't want to get into that, but from a consumption point of view, really think about it. There's real data which we are capturing, and we are realizing that there's an over-exaggeration of slowdown. There is a slowdown. There is no doubt about it. But we are trying to compare it with the last year. Why don't we compare this April-June with the April-June of 2014? And look at this, because during the election time, how the consumption on certain items gets impacted and how it slows down. We have looked at the data and we find that is a very clear trend. And that's why my expectation is this festival season is going to be fantastic for most of the consumer brands. And it will look even better because the base of the last quarter is now actually a much lower base. Whether it's 5% or whether it's 15%, we will only know when the real numbers come out.
Course, that is when we will get the actual data. But, just going by these reports that I have with me at hand, and Mr. Ganesh, dwindling discounts, the discounts seem to have halved between what we saw in 2018 versus what we're seeing now. And that has always been a very integral part for most of these e-commerce players. That really seems to be changing now with the government rules and e-tailers not really preferring to, go the high cash burn route. What's your take on that front?
No, I think that is the right trend, and we should welcome that particular trend. We have seen even in the food tech space, there have been a lot of backlash against very heavy discounting. I think indiscriminate discounting to change consumer behavior using the capital that you have got to give unsustainable discount is not a good practice. Discount is fine to change consumer behavior, to spur, but it cannot continue on ongoing basis. Obviously, people did overdo it, burning huge amount of capital. Good to see that the discounts have come down. and good to see that people are focusing on unit economics. It levels the playing field a bit and helps the not so heavily funded players. But I don't think that is really, we should read too much into that. People are smart. People will go for the best product, best choice, bets available. Discount is good, that will make them move, but continuously to buying on discount is not something that they do. Even if you look at before e-commerce, before all this talk started, you did have end of festival, end of season sale. You did have deep discounts. All that was already happening. Now it has come into the front line of the media. So I would welcome the move, but I think we see a fair amount of rationality. It's also good to see associations pushing back on indiscriminate discounting. Obviously, as a consumer, I love the discount, but I do realize that it's not sustainable on an ongoing basis, and we should have a fair playing field. That's what seems to be happening now.
Okay, a fair playing field is what we require. But Harminder, just going by this report, the average ticket size is down nearly 20%. Mobile phones down 17%. Fashion has seen a downtick of nearly 16%. Given that mobile phones was really the largest category, and if we're seeing a stagnation of growth over there, do you think that there's a sense that growth could move beyond fashion and mobile to grocery and other categories?
Yes. Absolutely. I think that's the way it has to go. Even if you look at the organized retail, and I consider e-commerce as the next wave of organization of retail in India. So even in the online retail, organized retail, which happened, it was led by fashion and then led by the consumer electronic. And I think grocery has followed. And I think same trend we are going to see in case of e-commerce also, where the consumer nature is the same, consumer behavior is the same. And on across formats, this is how it's going to happen, whether it's online or whether it's offline. I think once grocery starts picking up, that's where the overall e-commerce, I would say the ecosystem and the industry as such will become far more robust, far more sustainable, and it will be here to stay. And that's where I think I agree very well that the indiscriminate discounting is not something on the basis of which you can create sustainable businesses. You have to create businesses on the basis of the offer which you are making, consumer service which you are offering, convenience which you are offering, the range of products which you are offering. All of that put together, I think, is the reason why people will move from one channel to another, not just because you are getting cheaper prices or better discounts. There's a big price war, there is no end to it, and discounts, there's no end to it. At the end of it, everybody loses.
Ganesh, you've seen it basically dwindling down to now the two big players within the space, the e-commerce players who want to go into every sphere, put their finger in many pies, say video, hyper-local, food delivery, a bit of everything, if you will. Are the stakes higher now?
I didn't understand your question. Could you please repeat that?
Given that we've seen the two big e-commerce players who are, going into various different categories, be it hyper-local, video, food delivery, are the stakes higher now that they have diversified?
Yeah, I think very clearly we saw that in China, and it's happening in India, where integrated stacks are getting formed. When I say integrated stack, that means people are aligning to one or the other vertical ecosystems. What do you mean by ecosystem? Whether it is the payment ecosystem, the fintech part of it, the logistics part of it, the marketplace part of it, the hyperlocal delivery part of it, there seems to be consolidation happening. Obviously, you have the Walmart, Flipkart with their logistics and with PhonePe as one. You have Paytm Mall, Alibaba with investments in Big Basket and in Zomato and in Express Bees as the other. Similarly, you have SoftBank ecosystem. So we are clearly seeing integrated ecosystems forming. This was the case in China, whether you take Alibaba or Tencent. In India, it is not directly owned, but it's through multiple investments. I think that will continue to grow because we are seeing dominant fintech players extending their fintech muscle into other areas. Similarly, people who have got huge amount of traffic, be it Flipkart, Amazon, getting into content and video as a way to monetize the eyeballs. So I think that kind of consolidation of sorts into vertical ecosystems is clearly the ways the market seems to be moving. In India, it is more through investors aligning with one set of vertical stacks. Like in China, it has been one company actually owning all these spaces.
All right, fair enough. Thanks so much then, Ganesh, as well as Harminder, for joining in and giving us your views. So as of now, you believe that all of the concerns with respect to e-commerce sales dwindling, that seems to be unfounded, and that the numbers will really tell the true tale when we get the data out. But as of now, nothing to worry about. Tell you what, we'll take a quick break. Stay with us. On the other side, we have our Green Warrior as well who will be joining in, and we will be talking to the founders of Boheco, who will be with us on the other side. Back with Startup Central, let's focus in on our Green Warrior segment, where we understand and salute those who are doing things and initiatives in order to be sustainable and care more about the environment. Joining in today is a first mover in the industrial hemp and medicinal cannabis space in India, Boheco, where we saw a bunch of batchmates pass outs from HR college. They quit their corporate jobs, set up the company in 2013, and they took it upon themselves the task of revolutionizing the mindset of hemp in the country. The likes of Ratan Tata, Chairman Emeritus of Tata Sons, as well as Rajan Anandan of Google India, as well as some of the key investors. Let's bring on board then Yash Kotak as well as Chirag Tekchandani on board. Thanks so much for joining in. Going to start off with you first, Chirag. The common perception really of cannabis is primarily associated, of course, with narcotic properties. Given that there's a lack of awareness, it's hardly surprising given how India is yet to come at par with some of the global hemp markets. Can you tell us a little bit more about the medicinal and the sustainable uses of hemp?
The first time I heard about hemp, I looked it up and I found there were almost 25,000 different applications of this one crop. Needless to say, there were quite a few slogans around saying that this is the wonder crop that exists, and it's a $1 trillion crop that for many industries as well. Right from paper, fuel, seed products that actually enable food based items. We have clothing, textiles and yarns, medicines. So literally the proposition at Bombay Hemp Company is to make sure we have food, clothing, shelter as well as medicine as an offering from this crop.
Okay, I'm going to come to you then, Yash. So now the brand which is looking at the sustainable clothing, that is working with industrial hemp. So can you tell us a little bit how this transitions into an absolute zero waste crop?
So it'd be interesting for the viewers to know that the biggest problem with agriculture in India is agri-waste, right? So for example, in case of rice, after the grain is removed, the rest of the crop is completely burnt. Now, when we started Bombay Hemp Company, the prime vision was that we wanted to impact agriculture positively, and what better crop than hemp? For one simple reason that all of the parts of the plant can be used for industrial uses. The fiber, the outer fiber can be used for clothes, the inner herd or stem can be used for building material, the seeds can be used for food, the flower for medicine, so on and so forth. So it's a crop with over proven 25,000 uses, and it's a completely zero waste crop. Plus, as a brand, we're extremely mindful about all the processes invested in developing our product range, be it our packaging materials, be it the raw material itself, be it absolutely everything under the sun. In fact, we have a policy within Bombay Hemp Company of keeping our plastic consumption to 5% or less. Of course, we have to use a little bit of plastic because it's got great functional attributes, but we are working at solutions to even make do without that.
So Chirag, I understand you've even bagged the Ashoka Fellowship for being change makers in the industry in 2015. And, you know, there have been many examples of this. Who knew that some of the world's largest automobile companies like Mercedes and BMW have been mandated by the EU to utilize energy crops like hemp and a composite material for the paneling of their automobiles? Can you tell us a little bit more?
Yes, so very recently we've understood that about 25 kgs per vehicle is supposed to be made out of composite materials that are natural and fully sustainable in nature. Hemp provides to be a great solution as a crop because of its fire retardant properties, its fiber is used for inner panelings in each of these vehicles. So the high-end vehicles and the luxury car segment is currently utilizing this fiber for not just other purposes but also purposes for inner molds, which actually gives us a great opportunity as a country like India to work on this particular segment.
Okay, Yash, do you face regulatory issues concerning medicines based on cannabis which are still not available in India? And what are the efforts that you are undertaking in order to make that now more achievable?
Sure. So regulation has been quite critical, not just when it comes to medicines from cannabis, but medicines in general, right? And of course, when it's from cannabis, the regulations even more stringent. We are focusing on predominantly two set of trials, one to do with safety of cannabis-based medicines and the other is efficacy of cannabis-based medicines. The trials are on, we're working with government-affiliated institutes, CSR institutes, and waiting for the results to show the right kind of results before which we can launch these products in the market.
So Chirag, how do you manage to even undertake efforts to support women weavers and artisans in the cottage industry via this venture?
So Boheco actually looks after about 150 women artisans up in the north of India. We started off in about 2013 with 25 women artisans, and we've slowly grown that number up till 150. This is because we want to make sure that hemp, when we're building the entire sustainable value chain around it, the production of this happens right from the heart, and we want to make sure that we impact livelihoods of women artisans that cannot really make it to urban areas to fetch their livelihoods. And that's the reason we support these women artisans and make handcrafted items such as stoles and cushion covers and table mats with them, so that their creations can meet the light of the day in urban areas.
So Yash, tell us, what have been some of the collaborations that you've undertaken in order to grow the venture?
So collaboration has actually been a very critical part of Bombay Hemp Company. When we started out, we were the first movers, we were the first players in the hemp industry. And we realized that we cannot look at this industry and the other new entrants of this industry as competition rather than cooperation or collaboration as the way forward. Owing to this philosophy of ours, we have multiple collaborations that we pursue, be it at the fabrics end or be it with the health and human consumption end. We have collaborations with the likes of Tata Steel, where we're developing a range of highly technical end products. We have collaborations with applications such as Goki, which are fitness focused, where we kind of market using their platform, and so on and so forth. So collaboration is extremely critical for our organization's growth plans, even moving forward.
Okay, so Chirag, tell us about some of your key investors and how much have you raised so far?
So right from inception, Boheco has actually bootstrapped its way up until 2015. And in the year 2016 is when we raised our first round of funding, which was about $1 million. And subsequently after that, we raised about another $1 million from the investment fraternity. This has been pooled in by a number of individuals, some of them being the likes of Rajan Anandan, Mr. Ratan Tata, and the likes.
Okay, and finally then, Yash, tell us about your future growth plans. What's on the anvil?
So at Bombay Hemp Company, you can say the last 5 years went in exploration and the next 5 years are about exploitation. We are looking at a lot of, so we actually took the first 5 years to identify what product range worked for us, and just earlier this year or end of last year, we finalized our way forward. We are, of course, textiles is a very important part of our value chain, but we are looking at health and human consumption as a category to kind of foster our growth plans as well. We are looking at not just seed but leaf and flower based products as well. Of course, the regulation's tricky, but we think that when it comes to hemp and cannabis, the highest valued products are in that domain, and we are really going all guns blazing to achieve those goals.
All right, thanks very much for joining in, Yash and Chirag, and great going on the venture so far. On that note, we're completely out of time. Thanks so much for watching.